The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to another edition of the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send us an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And we're coming to you tonight around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and on Channel 54. That's the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. And if you'd like to get a subscription to Simul TV, just visit their website at simultv.com. This is a special 2-hour show. Our first guest tonight is Shadan Kapri, and we're going to be talking about the Red Movement this hour. And Shonda, welcome to the X Zone.
Hello, good evening. It's good to see you tonight.
Nice seeing you too, Shonda. You're an international business attorney, and where are you located?
I'm actually in Washington State, the beautiful Washington State. And my name is Shadan Kapri. I know it's hard. Yes, and I never get mad when people say it wrong because I just figure most of the time they will. So, but no, Shonda's nice too. You can call me either one.
I'm going to call you Shadan, which is your real name. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. I would imagine that a lawyer such as yourself is very busy, but when we found out about the Red Movement, we had to bring you on to talk to you about this. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what is the Red Movement?
That's a great question. It's a social justice and environmental justice movement that shows the average person what they can do to help promote social justice in their own lives. The Red Movement really started with a movement, and then in 2020, the first edition of the book came out. And it really takes readers on a journey, around the world. And one of the fundamental questions it deals with is the things that we surround ourselves with, the things in our house, in our closets, in our cupboards. Who are the people behind these things? Because most of the time we don't even think about that, right? We go to a big box store and we just buy something. We don't even think about, this person who made my t-shirt or this person who made my child's favorite blanket. Who is that person? Where are they? Are they compensated properly for all the things that they've contributed into our lives? And the Red Movement really just kind of begins to take that veil of secrecy off of that. So people start to kind of see the things around them and see how it's actually all connected to social injustice.
Now, when did the Red Movement start, Shadan?
It started in 2015, but it really didn't take off until the book was published. The first edition came out in 2020, and then the second edition came out in 2021. And so what the book does, the book is really in three different phases. The first phase talks about the things in our life, from food to clothes, diamonds, toys, chocolate, coffee, all the things that we consume every day and don't think anything of. So the first part of the book talks about how all these industries have been tainted by modern day slavery. And so it sort of begins this voyage of helping people understand that the things that we surround ourselves with, there's a story to them. And unfortunately, most of us don't know what that story is. And not knowing has added to the problem of human trafficking and modern day slavery because it's all connected. So the Red Movement begins to just kind of reveal that to people. For many people, it's the first time.
I hope you don't take this next question wrong, and I mean no offense whatsoever. But with today's economy, with just getting over COVID, money is tight. A lot of businesses have lost everything. Why should the everyday consumer worry about where the product is being made as long as they can afford it and work with it in their family?
That's a great question. It's a question I see all the time when I do interviews. People ask me that question, and it's a fantastic question. And what I do is I try to bring it down to a way that everyone can relate, like clothes, right? T-shirts. let's say that you need a new t-shirt. So you go to
Mhm.
your favorite store and you see this t-shirt's on sale. It's $7. That's great. That's a
Right.
great deal. Who doesn't want to pay $7 for a t-shirt? Now, that same t-shirt, if it's made in America or if it's made in a way where the people that actually made the t-shirt were not exploited through wages or dumping environmental toxins into the environment, that same t-shirt would actually be more expensive if it was created in a way that was more ethically sourced. Now, the average person, they're shopping and I don't care about the $7 t-shirt or the person who's behind the t-shirt. The problem is it's not just about who's behind the t-shirt. These t-shirts, these items that are made across the world, oftentimes they're not very good quality. They're
Right.
items that are environmentally toxic. They're items that we have the companies that make them, seep these environmental toxins into the rivers, the oceans, and so it's kind of a multi-pronged approach, because it's not just the social justice aspect. It's also the fact that these items are not made well. So that $7 t-shirt, if you would have bought something maybe made in the USA or made in a way that's more ethical, it would last you longer. It wouldn't fade. It's a better quality. And back in the 50s, quality mattered, right? It really mattered to
Yes,
the average
right. Yeah.
consumers. They wanted something that was good quality. And fortunately, now we've gone to the other extreme where we buy more and more items that we don't need, that have made of
Mhm.
poor quality, and then we constantly throw them away. And then we wonder why we're in so much debt, right? Because again, we're constantly buying products that are not very good and that really we throw away, and in many cases don't even maybe wear a couple times and throw away. So really the movement is about being conscious. And one way to be conscious is to spend your money wisely, right? Don't buy 6 t-shirts that are each $7, because you're going to throw those away. Buy one good t-shirt that's $10, $15. It was made in America. That the people who created it created a good item that's going to last. And so part of this movement kind of goes back to the years ago, decades ago, when quality mattered. Because at the end of the day, you can have 60 of the same t-shirts, but if you're constantly throwing them away, you're not saving money. You're actually spending more money in the long run. So it does matter.
But shouldn't this be up to the government to control when importing from different countries? And shouldn't the government, where the child labor or the human trafficking is being perpetrated, should they not be banned from exporting into the United States and Canada?
That is a great question. The problem is, if you start banning it, you're going to be banning everything, because so many
Mm.
of the items are made in questionable factories and questionable parts of the world, and places where we know that human rights are abuses. The US government actually publishes a report every year on the idea of forced labor and child labor. And most of the time, the
Mhm.
media has just ignored it. But what it does is the report talks about some of the common items in our lives, in our cupboards, that are tainted.
Mhm.
Everything from cotton to sugar to strawberries. It's a list of all the items in a person's house. And so
Right.
unfortunately, we can't rely on the government, because the government, they bring in items and we consume them. We have to
Sure.
rely on consumers to sort of be aware enough to know that you're not spending your money wisely. You're just spending it over and over again on the same junk.
But once again, I have to go back to the financial situation of both the United States and Canada now,
Mhm.
where just getting out of COVID, the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. Even big box stores are raising their prices
Mhm.
to make up for their losses during COVID.
Mhm.
So once again, my question is, why shouldn't the government be the one to bear the responsibility of monitoring this, and not the consumer, who basically and so rightfully deserves a break if they can get one?
Yeah, no, they absolutely deserve a break. I 100%
Mhm.
agree with you on that. Unfortunately, the government, it's not something that's been being handled by the government. And it's not just America. It's these items are being transferred all over the world.
Mhm.
So it's so incredibly difficult for importers to be able to distinguish, was this created in an ethical way? Was this created in a way that didn't damage the environment? And so what's happened that's really wonderful is now all these millennials and Generation Z, Generation X, they're growing up and they're creating these companies that actually care about these issues. And so if you buy from them, it's actually something that you can feel easy knowing that the people that created it weren't exploited, or the environment wasn't harmed. Now,
But once again, the dollar counts. And if you've got a company, let's use your example of the $7 t-shirt. Okay. If I take, let's say, my grandchildren to a big box store and they want 5 t-shirts because they come in 5 different colors, I'm looking at $35 for the one that is from, let's say, China, because a lot of t-shirts are made from China, imported into Canada and the United States. Or do I look at buying them one for $15 or $20? And if I can find a t-shirt for $20 for a child these days, man, I'm doing pretty good. I'm in the wrong business. So as a consumer, once again, I look at $35 for 5, or I look at 2 for $30. I'm going to go with the $7 shirt and say, well, you know what? I really feel bad that these injustices are being done outside of Canada, the United States. But as a consumer, I need my dollar to go further. So why would I understand what you're saying about the quality. I understand what you're saying about the manufacturing. I understand what you're saying about the labor. But as a consumer, I hate to say it, but it sucks to be you. I want my shirts.
Right. And really, as a consumer, a child, let's use your example, the grandchildren that see the 6 t-shirts. What I would do if I was in that, Sarah, is I would explain to my grandchild, you don't need 6 t-shirts that are all the same color, different colors of the same. I mean, that's absolutely something you don't need. And again, we would actually save money by buying one t-shirt that you could wear for a longer period of time than spending like 7 times 5, that would be $35 versus buying one t-shirt is $12, and it's a t-shirt and actually showing the younger generation what it means to actually maybe save your money and not spend your money and not go into the cycle of debt. Because again, people say, well, I can buy more with this. You're buying more junk. You're buying more stuff that you're going to throw away.
Isn't that the right of the consumer to come up to that conclusion if they want to buy A, B, or C?
Which is fine. If that's ultimately what they want to do, that's fine. But the problem is most people don't know that that's what they're doing. Most people don't know that some of the items that they're supporting actually help advance social injustice. And this
all right, hold on here.
Want to know.
Okay, hold on. I've got to take a break. Please stand by. X Zone Nation will be back on the other side of this break as we continue talking to our very special guest this hour, Shadan Kapri. Did I get the name right?
Shadan, close enough.
All right. Sorry about that. Her website is the red-movement.com. Shadan.com. All right, we'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. X Zone Nation, Shadan Kapri is our special guest. She is with the Red Movement, red-movement.com. Where does the United Nations stand on all this? There must be some governmental agency, whether it is the federal government of the United States or Canada or the international community. Why aren't they doing something about it then?
Well, they are trying to do something about it. The problem is that there's so many human rights issues around the world that it's hard to just pick this one out of all of them. The United Nations has something called special individuals that go to certain nations and write these reports. But you have to understand unfortunately, the average report written by a UN expert is not read by a majority of the people around the world. It's not something that hits the consumers. It's something that hits the individuals who are in leadership, but there's only so much they can do. And so really the purpose of this movement is to give power back to the consumers and kind of put them in the driving seat. And I want to go back for a moment to your t-shirt example, because I think it really kind of goes to the core of what I'm trying to say. So what I'm saying is by buying I'm going to use your example, 5 t-shirts, same t-shirt, different color, $7, you're
Mhm.
spending $35, right?
Yeah.
Instead, if you buy, maybe 2, again, most children don't need all this stuff. And really, we're not teaching children financial literacy when we
But we
say,
don't have we it's wait a sec, hold on here. Hold on here.
Mhm.
I was using the t-shirts as an example. All right.
Right.
Number 1. Number 2, if it's up to the consumer to make the decision, why is it so important that you make this point?
Well, because what I'm trying to say is that they're not saving money. I mean, right now we're in the middle of inflation. People are trying to
Mhm.
save money, even though all of us are spending more. But by spending more money on items we don't need, or essentially junk, or items that are going to degrade and we're going to throw it
Mhm.
away, we're throwing
Right.
money away. We're actually throwing money away. And that's, I think, the difference between, oh, my dollar goes further, or
Mhm.
I'm spending all this money on things I don't want to impress people I don't even like. I
Okay,
mean, at the
okay,
end
okay,
of the
okay,
day, you're
okay.
actually
I get it.
saving.
I think the main gist is here that you want the dollar, the consumer dollar, to stay within the United States and not go to
That is
outside manufacturers.
absolutely, that is one of the solutions, is for the consumer dollar to stay with the United States. The other solution is to
Well,
buy from brands and
mhm.
companies that produce items in an ethical and environmentally conscious manner. So
You
there's
know,
different ways.
you go to IKEA today, and even though the box is stamped IKEA, the products are made in China. But consumers know that. Once again, their dollar goes further. So, and if the cost of the US products and Canadian products are higher, all the manufacturer has to do is lower the prices and they'll get more sales. But once again, as a consumer, if my grandson, who's 8 years old, wants 7 t-shirts because they come in 7 different colors compared to 2 t-shirts, one of each color, I'm sorry, the grandchild wins all the time.
Well, and the grandchild is learning that it doesn't matter. You just buy exactly what you want, whether
Right.
you need
That's your
it.
right. That's your right.
Well, it's
That's
it's
your
a
right.
definitely a right, but are we teaching the next generation the tools they'll need to actually do well in this world? I mean, yes, you can buy 20 t-shirts for that
Mhm,
matter for your
right.
grandchild, but isn't the job of a, grandparent also to kind of help nurture and mentor and help the
Oh,
child?
you're so right. You're so right. And if you teach the grandchild that just because it's not made in the United States or Canada that you can get more bang for your buck, he's going to go for more bang for his buck.
Or you could say, we want this to be made in a way that provides jobs for people that are fair. And so, do you want to get 5 t-shirts for $7, knowing that maybe it's questionable the ethical way that it was made, or would you rather buy 2 t-shirts for $10, let's say, and know
I,
that they are made in America and made in a way? I think most kids are actually, if you give it to them in terms of sort of a moral dilemma, most kids are really good kids. They don't want people to be exploited just so they can have more stuff. Now, I understand.
you show me a child of 7 or 8 years old who can envelop and embrace the idea of child labor. I'll be very surprised.
Right. So this movement isn't really for the child or the 7, 8.
Okay.
This is for the parent. This is for the person who's making the decisions in the house. Hopefully, all the decisions are not being made by a 7 or 8-year-old, because then you got trouble when they hit the teenage years. This movement is really about, it's for the parents who are out there buying items, and
Okay.
they care. They want to know. Now, not everybody wants to know. Not everybody cares. A lot of people like to go down to the dollar store and buy $100 worth of junk that they may or may not use and then throw
But
away.
okay,
And
we
that's
call it junk.
fine.
We call it junk. We call it junk.
Mhm.
All right. But there are a lot of people out there on social assistance where that $100 goes a hell of a lot further than it would going to a big box store and just buying something that says made in the USA.
Right, right.
So
And again,
aren't no, wait a second here. What right do we have, you as an advocate, me as a member of the media, to tell
mhm,
these people, no, you can't buy that, even though you don't make the salaries that either you do or I do.
mhm.
Going to the dollar store is supporting, you know, uh, people who get exploited all the time. Do you really think that we have that right? Because as far as I'm concerned, when we start telling people who are less fortunate than us that not than us that they don't have the right to buy what they need with what they have, I think society's in one heck of a mess.
Well, the issue is not whether we have the right or not. The issue is the consumer aware? Now, once the consumer is aware and they
Mhm.
decide, hey, I don't care. I don't have the money to be
Yeah.
spending all this. And that's fine. That's for each individual person to make on their own. And there are consumers out there that, like you said, they're on limited assistance. And so going to
Mhm.
the dollar store, yes. But this movement is really more about awareness than it is about telling people what to buy. Now, if they know that this
Okay.
item is made in China and it's
Mhm.
questionable how it was made and they still want to buy it, that's fine. They can buy whatever they want. But really, this movement is for the people that don't know and actually would care to know if the item is made in a way that's questionable or not. It's not for every single person. And it's
Right.
definitely not geared for people that are really struggling, that need to go to the dollar store, need to go to, these stores where they can get a better
Mhm.
deal. It's not really meant for them. It's meant for the person that actually has the means to go and spend their money in other ways and cares
Oh,
about
as I see.
quality, cares
So
about
so it's
how it's
so
made.
it's so it's targeted towards the people who have the money.
It's targeted towards the people who have money that actually care about these issues. Now, you can have money and not care about these issues, and that's
Mhm.
fine too. There's a lot of people out there like that. But there's also a group of people that really do care about these social justice issues, that care about leaving an environment for their kids and grandkids and great grandkids that they can be proud of, that care
Mhm.
about living in a world that doesn't promote, human trafficking or modern day slavery. There is a segment of society that cares about these issues and they're willing to vote with their dollar. And what this movement does is it supports them and it gives them advice on where they can do that on the different websites, the apps, the brands
Mhm.
that do care about these issues and are willing to, put
So
time
is
in.
this movement a lobbyist organization?
No, no, it's absolutely not a lobbyist organization. No, essentially it's a nonprofit movement. It's made for people, and there's a lot of people out there who,
Mhm.
for religious reasons, for personal reasons, for moral reasons, care about these issues and want to know that they are not contributing contributing some way
Mhm.
inadvertently. This movement is really for them.
So why isn't it the responsibility of the big box store, the retailer, to bring in only products that are made with ethical standards instead of um, the child abuse, the child labor laws, and everything else that we're talking about here? Why don't they do that? Should it be the consumer's responsibility?
Because the stores aren't bound by any laws to do that, and
Mhm.
in many times the stores don't even know. I mean, we can guess that a $7 t-shirt is made in a way that's exploitive or made in a way that isn't good quality, but
Mhm.
again, unless you go back to the factory that made that t-shirt and actually walk around there, you're not really sure. So it's not legally, it's not the job of the big box stores. Now, would something like that pass? Probably not. There's so much actual lobbyists that would
Mhm.
lobby against that, for their government regulation.
Sure.
Unfortunately, the burden falls on the consumer. And some consumers don't care, and that's absolutely fine, but some
What are the
actually do.
what are the statistics on those who care and those who don't care?
The younger generation, there's been studies done over and over again that show that the young people under 35 care. They care more. They care about where their money
Mhm.
goes. Whereas, the older the generation, the statistics are less. Now, that's not to say that there aren't a lot of people who are older who really, care about these issues and feel
Mhm.
passionate about making sure that their dollars don't promote these issues. But overall under 35, and a lot of these brands that I'm talking about that are made that are you know these brands that make items that are made by people who've been rescued from human trafficking, like you're actually buying items made by them to help them learn skills and reintegrate into society. Under 35, that matters to them because they want to make sure that their hard-earned money is going to ways that actually promote social justice. Now, over 35, it still matters to a lot of people, but it's this younger generation that's really moving this movement forward and
But
kind of
isn't it
moving these
isn't it also
issues.
true that the younger generation is making more money than this round than the same money that would have been made by the older generation? Doesn't that have a lot to do with it?
I don't think so. That's not what the studies say. The studies say it's not really about making money. And as you know, every industry is different. I mean,
Yeah.
when you say younger generation, a lot of these younger generation kids are coming out with a lot of student loan debt. So yes, maybe they are making more money, but they also have greater amount of debt that they're paying off. It's just about whether social justice is something that's important. It's at the forefront. For some people, the younger they are, it's more at the forefront. If we looked at the whole Black Lives Matter, it was mostly pushed forward by a lot of really young people.
Hmm.
And so those are the people that these issues matter to them. And those are the people that sort of either push these problems forward or they do nothing.
All right, stand by. We've got to take a break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation, the website to check out is www.red-movement.com. We'll both be back after this break. Don't go away. Exonation, Shadan Kapri is our special guest. Red-movement.com is their website. How do we know that we're going to be getting better quality if we buy from the U.S. Or Canada instead of outside of the countries?
Well, there's laws in the U.S. and Canada that determine, fair wages, that determine working conditions, that determine, the EPA, what we can dump into the oceans
Right.
and waters or not. Those same laws don't apply overseas, and they're not uniformly enforced like they are in the U.S.
But don't U.S. companies and Canadian companies break these laws as well?
Possibly. The problem is if you're a company in the US or Canada and you break these laws, there's big fines that you end up paying. And so
Right.
the chances are statistically less. Now, are there companies in the US and Canada that break laws? Oh, of course there are. There's companies that don't pay taxes.
Sure.
There's a lot of these issues.
Mhm.
But again, there's stiff fines and there's laws and regulations to make sure that these things don't happen. Whereas in other, especially third world countries, these laws and regulations are not in
Okay.
place.
So my point that I'm trying to make here is if the government is policing what happens within the U.S. and Canada when it comes to these manufacturers, the wages, the employment conditions, and so on, why don't they also take an interest in what is coming into the country in order to stop it at the border instead of letting it come into the store, where we now have to give consumers a choice of it's either your dollar goes here or your dollar goes here. Put your dollar in Canada and the United States and stop paying better prices for cheaper quality because they can't afford the prices of the Canadian or U.S. product.
Mhm.
Why doesn't the government or why doesn't somebody do something before it even gets here to stop that problem?
Unfortunately, these supply chains go around the world, so it's hard
Mm,
to know. And even companies like Apple, they've definitely come a long way, but they're aware. If you go and Google Apple and human rights, you'll be shocked
mhm.
at the reports that come up because a lot of these supply chains are in countries where these laws are not into place. And so, are we going to stop Apple from bringing Apple products into the US? God, no. There's no way that would happen. The lobbyists would shut that down so quickly. So the
Right.
government cannot. It comes down to commerce and the free flow of commerce and capitalism. So really the government is not in a position to do this, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you ask. Some people say, hey, the government shouldn't be involved in the items
Right.
that I have access to. So the government's not in a position. There's laws, but again, it's the supply chains. Even Apple, I mean, even some of the most popular brands, these supply chains go around the world. How can you police that when something is made
Okay.
in one
Good point.
country? And so, unfortunately, it does fall on the consumer. And it's not something that the government is even adequately prepared to
Mhm.
deal with.
Then what does customs and immigration do at the border? I mean, when they're not taking care of the people. I know for a fact that they inspect mail, they inspect product coming into the United States and Canada. So what would be so hard? And I know for a fact that they look for shipments coming in from countries where there's copyright violations on products, and they seize that. So why wouldn't they do it with the rest of the products? Or is it because companies like Apple pay so much in taxes that if they tick off Apple, they're just looking for more trouble. And if Apple is buying from these countries, why don't we bring this to the attention of the consumers? Why don't we say, hey, don't buy Apple products?
Well, Apple's a great example. I'm glad you brought that up because years ago, about 10 years ago, there were some big name issues that happened. There was some explosions that happened in Apple factories or third party factories that
Mhm.
Apple was working with. And so Apple is one of those stories that actually they've come a long way. They've actually put together like a human rights board in Apple to actually go and look at these companies, these third world suppliers.
Right.
And the problem is that they know you're coming. So of course it's going to be that day, things are going to be,
Mhm.
in the best situation. So you cannot stop commerce. The government is not in a position. If that's the case, then pretty much everything that comes from China would have to be seized and returned, and that's just not something that's going to happen. So unfortunately, it does fall on the consumer. The government, there's no. I mean, there are laws that items made by slave labor shouldn't be coming into the United States, but how are you to enforce that? They're not enforced. They're not enforceable because so many of these items come from other countries. How could you even begin to decipher, okay, this one came from China, this one came from Bangladesh, so they're
Mhm.
both not coming in. If that's the case, then we're going to have an even bigger supply chain problem and more inflation than we have now. So it's really, unfortunately, not up to the government. It's not something the government can do. It's up to the private individual. And it's whether it's something that's important to them or not. Really, that's what it comes down to.
What was it that, happened that you decided to do what you're doing as far as consumer rights?
Well, that's a great question. I think the part that really sort of startled me was when I started not just items, because a lot of people
Mhm.
know, the items that we create are oftentimes questionable, but also the events like the Super Bowl, the World Cup, the Olympics, the human rights issues around these events. The average person has no idea. I mean, just even let's just take the Super Bowl, for example.
Okay.
It's widely known that the Super Bowl is one of the largest human trafficking events. Many young women from 14 to 18 are trafficked into the city where the Super Bowl happens. The FBI, they've done joint investigations. They've done task force. They've
Mhm.
they've uncovered girls, runaways, some of them who've been kidnapped. So these events, I think that's what kind of startled me because when I started researching this, I just saw how embedded these problems are. Same thing with the Olympics. Those cities that they create overnight to host the Olympics, a lot of them use questionable products in making the buildings and making the airports. And so it's just, I think that's what really made me interested in this because it's not just products, it's the events that we watch, it's the things that we use, it's the things that we surround ourselves with. And my problem is that it's so embedded in our everyday lives that it's hard to distinguish like what is this item something that I can feel positive that it was created in a way that was ethically sourced and the environment wasn't damaged by creating it? That's the problem. And so there are brands that I go to that I like to do a lot of my shopping from, and also
Mhm.
buying secondhand. It's one of the best ways to decrease the carbon footprint. And one of the best ways to just, there are a huge amount of items already here. Why are we constantly buying more when we can actually, like you said, save money by secondhand, recycled, used, and have our
Mhm.
dollar go further and also not be promoting social injustice or environmental destruction at the same time?
Well, as far as the environment, I think there's a lot of companies in Canada and the US that if they were using, for example, the water industry, the
Mhm.
plastic bottles, why do we need them? You
We
know,
don't, we
we
don't,
don't.
and we
We don't.
don't, and
Yeah.
there's states like California. I actually was
Mhm.
in California about a couple months ago, and I don't know if you're in California. You can't get a plastic straw. I
No.
think they outlaw plastic straws, which I
Yeah.
think is amazing. I think that's wonderful. We need to start
Mhm.
outlawing, this overabundance of items that we're using and just throwing away because all it does is
Now,
it adds to landfills.
I understand that the government has jurisdiction over manufacturers. So if we have manufacturers who are mandated not to use plastic, wouldn't that help?
Right, but that's something that again is easy. I can look at something and see if it's plastic or not. I mean, that's something
Yeah.
that's easily
Hmm.
anyone can look at that and know.
Right.
But a t-shirt, how would you know? I mean, how unless yes, it's made in Bangladesh, but unless you went to the actual factory it was made in Bangladesh, how would you possibly know? And by cutting off trade with Bangladesh and China and India, then you think inflation is bad now, it's going to even get worse. So
Well, it wouldn't
again,
get worse if U.S. companies and Canadian companies, made better products for less money and help the consumer instead of forcing the hand of the consumer to go to these alternative purchase points.
right, and that's where buying secondhand. I mean, it's amazing some of the thrift stores that have popped up, and
Hmm.
even now you can buy designer clothes secondhand online. So there are ways around it. It's just a matter of do we want to educate ourselves about those ways and apply it to our lives.
Or do we want to have the attitude, well, geez, Jimmy's got a pair of Nikes. I want a pair of Nikes. You know, Look at this cost of the shoes, for goodness sake. Do they really need to be that expensive? Well, of course you do, because you have to pay the superstar who endorses them. Do football games have to be that expensive? Sure, they do, because you've got to pay all the football players. And the list goes on. I look at the consumers saying, yeah, you're causing a bit of the problem, but the sports industry and manufacturers in general are also contributing to the way the consumer thinks, the way the consumer shops, and once again, the consumer's dollar needs to stretch. So if the consumer has to go to a dollar store, even though they're buying products from China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, or wherever,
Mhm.
they're going to do it.
Right, or the consumer can buy secondhand, or the
Mhm.
consumer can go online
Well,
and buy things
not
from.
everybody likes secondhand. Not everybody likes going to thrift stores. Not everybody likes going to yard sales. A lot of people don't like buying other people's stuff. And that's their right. I don't think that anybody has the right to dictate or even suggest to somebody that they should do something that they don't want to do.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it's really ultimately up to them.
Hmm.
And if people want to continue buying items that are low quality and buying the same
Yeah,
item over and over
it's their
again,
right.
then that's what they can do. But then they can't say, "Well, we're poor, we're in debt, we're this, we're that." I mean, you kind of make choices that put yourself in that
Yeah.
position, unfortunately.
Sean, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to find out more about this young lady's quest to convert consumers, visit her online at red-movement.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break at the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone. My guest next hour is Grandma Ness. Interesting. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, and we're in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada.